Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the conclusion, or no, the summary, not the SITREP, but the summary of the situation over at the Ukraine war for the day of 591 to 592 for the 7th to the 8th of October. The Russian forces has launched a missile strike over at onto the Mihorod air base in the Potova region. They actually attacked this air base that actually houses the Sukhoi 27 of the Ukrainian Air Force. So this is reported by pro-Russian source Ryba. We do not have the Russian Defense Ministry mentioned about this yet. And otherwise, major actions. The Russians continue their counter-offensive over in the Orikhiv sector. This is Orikhiv. So this is Orikhiv, and the Russians are attacking towards Novodanilivka, and towards Uspenivka, towards Malatomashka. They are also counter-attacking a little bit on Verbove and towards Robotine. While the Ukrainians are still trying to push south of Robotine and Verbove, and they are also attacking towards Kopani in the north of Kopani. So so this is the current situation over at the Orikhiv sector. The Ukrainians did also lose Sukhoi 25, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, over Preobrazhenka. And over at the Huyaipole sector, this is Huyaipole. This is the Huyaipole sector. There is Russian offensive in the area of Mafopil. The Russians are attacking north and towards Zhevone in this area here. This area has been largely already sort of captured by the Russian forces previously. This is a continuation. It looks pretty much like a diversionary attempt to pull Ukrainian forces away from other front line to concentrate on the Huyaipole sector. I do not expect this to be a major offensive by the Russians to do anything very strategic. Over at the Velika Novosilka sector, this is the Velika Novosilka sector. Major clashes continue over in the Prione region, with the Ukrainians attacking Prione and the north of Prione. Russians did some limited counter-offensive, and it looks like the Ukrainians are very determined to capture Prione. This offensive has been going for quite some time already. And why is this important? Because this actually secures the western flank of Staromayoske. They need this area here so that they can swing to the rear of the Russian front line that is currently holding Staromayoske hostage. And the Ukrainians also did launch an attack on the western part of Staromayoske and also near Staromayoske to basically create this buffer zone. If not, then the Russians are actually putting pressure, with the Russians also doing some attack and bombarding Ukrainian forces within Staromayoske. So, and then over at Uruzaine, the Ukrainians are also conducting some attacks, limited probings and whatnot over in the Uruzaine region. And so pretty much it's still a very positional thing at this moment. And moving away from the Velika Novosilka sector, over at the area of Novodonetsk, the Russian forces are still reportedly, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, attacking Zolota Neva. While this is happening, the Ukrainians actually launched an attack against Novodonetsk, but it was detected by the Russian forces where they actually launched a fire mission against the Ukrainians. Over in the Voleda region, over at the Voleda region, this is Voleda, the fortress city of Voleda. The Russian forces, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, is attacking northward towards Vodian from Mykolaiv region, and this attracted a major Ukrainian counteroffensive towards Mykolaiv. And then there is also geolocation to show that the Ukrainians actually have some progress on the northeastern part of Mykolaiv. So this offensive did not work out. The Russians managed to hold the line, but it does give me a feeling that the Ukrainian front line by Deep State UA actually is more accurate. Over in the Novomikhailivka region, this is actually south of Marinka in the southwestern part of Donetsk city. So in Novomikhailivka, the Russian forces seems to have launched a major offensive, according to pro-Russian sources, from the southeast to the south of Novomikhailivka. And then the Russians are also conducting major shelling and airstrikes on the Ukrainian forces around this area here. So this is actually reported by everyone in terms of the fighting within this region here. Just that only the only Rybar actually gave a bit more direction into where the offensive is coming. Previously, the skirmishes is actually in the north, and it could be the case where this was actually the diversionary. It forces Ukrainians to actually send a reinforcement to secure the northern part, and that's when the Russians actually strike from the south. Got a feeling this could be the case. Over at the Marinka region, this is usual. The Russians continue to push within the Marinka region, as well as some attacks being reported across Krasnohorivka. Nothing much to report except that the Russians are really not really want to eat this final piece of cake. It's like, when you go out to eat a meal with your friends or family, then there's this one last piece of meat or prawn or pastry, and you're just too shy to eat it. It's like, you can have it, like you can have it. Then it's like your friend also very shy, don't want to eat, and then they'll tell you, hey, you can have it instead. Then end up nobody eats it, and then it's just left there and get cleared by the waiter. And that is just a waste of food. No, you cannot do that, because we need to save the earth. And the African kids are all very hungry. Moving on, over at the Avdiivka front, this is the Avdiivka front. There is some exchanges in terms of fighting. The Ukrainian sources says the Russians are attacking west of Krasnohorivka. Ukraine Defense Ministry seems to suggest there's fighting in the Avdiivka region, which I believe is in the south. Russian Defense Ministry reported attack towards Vodian, and there's also attack towards Povomaysky by the Russians, and the Ukrainians attacking at Develsky. So very random lines of arrows, which I believe this is just very positional. You can totally ignore this front line tentatively. No massive offensive, to be honest, at this moment, that is going to give you some excitement and orgasm. Over in the Bakhmut front, over at the Bakhmut, in the South Bakhmut, the Ukrainian forces continue their offensive operation, and the focus, as usual, if you do not know, is in the Klishchiivka region, in Andriivka and Kodyomivka. This is actually the main objective, or no, the main assault operation, other than the one at Robotine-Verbove region in the Orikhiv sector. This is the main one, and particularly the concentration is at Andriivka, because in this area here, the Ukrainian forces want to fan out from Andriivka and cut off this highway that the Russians are using, and particularly maybe capture Oradivka. However, the Russians are constantly sending reinforcement and counterattack towards Andriivka, and they are holding a very strong position over at Kodyomivka. The Ukrainians have not been able to break through Kodyomivka just yet, and the Russians also hold a very strong line, a very stable line around the railway lines, and they actually even conducted counteroffensive over in the Klishchiivka region. So the entire offensive by the Ukrainians over in the South Bakhmut front has basically been bogged down. The Ukrainians are still trying. They are not giving up just yet, but it does feels like things are a bit hard over in this area here. Geolocation of some Ukrainian forces in the north of Klishchiivka does shows that the Ukrainians are also at least holding some position in this northern part of this area here. But it is interesting to see that the Ukrainians try not to go too near to Bakhmut city, because all these buildings around here can conduct fire missions on them and conduct major counter attacks that can wipe out their assault forces. So we didn't really see much of these Ukrainian attacks near to Bakhmut city itself. In the north, there is only some attack being reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry in the north of Bodanivka, and that's about it over in the northern part of this cat. So this looks like a foot, so the cat, so this is the cat. Oh, draw back badly. This is the cat. Meow. And this is the eyes. It's looking at this foot. There's this foot here, and then it just eat it. So yeah. So that's it from the cat front. Over in the Sivas front, there is actually no fighting being reported in this area here. And a Crimea front. This is Crimea front. At the Crimea front, there is a concentration of Russian forces in the Crimea region, and this is reported by Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian source, reporting maybe that the Russians may be going on the major offensive in this area here. We are not sure if this is the case. Otherwise, in terms of the frontline actions, the Ukrainians are continuing their constant attack within this forest region in the Serebransky Forestry near Dibrova, as well as at the Toske region. The Russians are also conducting their own counteroffensive, limited ones at Toske and Serebransky Forestry to hold the Ukrainians in their positions. And over in the northern part of the Crimea front, over in the Makiivka region, everyone is starting to acknowledge the fighting over at the Makiivka region. So with the Russians continue to be launching some very major offensive, and this is actually for the first time acknowledged by the Russian Defense Ministry. So the Ukrainian forces actually launched a major counterattack, I think over today or yesterday. So to push back this Russian offensive. So Makiivka is definitely under a severe threat, because if you look at the distance from the city to the front line, that's not even 2 kilometers. The Russians are really close, just 2 fields away. So the Ukrainians are getting a bit nervy over in the Makiivka region. There is some changes in the front line west of Kamazynivka, and Ukrainian forces seems to have over certain days managed to capture this forest around this area west of Kamazynivka, and over in the Novoselivsky region there is reports of Russians attacking Novoselivsky, but this feels a bit limited. It doesn't feel like a main thing. So that's all from the Sviatove front. So this is Sviatove. Over at the Kupiansk front, this is the Kupiansk front. At the Kupiansk front, the Russian forces seems to be conducting some major offensive over mainly in the Sinkivka region. They are attacking the Sinkivka region, and over at the Olyansky Ivanivka region. This is reported and acknowledged by both defense ministries. So this is actually a very legitimate thing. Both, or you can say both, very illegitimate, because they like to lie. The Russians say the Ukrainian Defense Ministry cannot be trusted. The Ukrainians tell me the Russians cannot be trusted. The Russian Defense Ministry always lie. No, you can just check the comments. It's always been like this. No, so these are the most forced offensive ever. The Ukrainians actually launched a major offensive over these past 24 hours to try to push back. The counterattack is at Sinkivka and Olyansky. So the Russians are continuing to push this area here, and most significant in terms of the strategically important, in the sense that if the Russians manage to secure Ivanivka and capture Stepova Novoselivska, they are able to cut this road, and which means the Russians can actually fan out from here, cut the road, and then the Ukrainians will not be able to use this highway that the Ukrainians are currently using to reinforce and resupply Kaislivka and Kotelevka, even Tobaivka and Kromalny. No, because the front line over here is a bit vague. We're not too sure where the front line actually is, because there is some overlapping information. So, but this highway is highly important for the Ukrainians to hold the front line around here. Sinkivka is important because if the Russians capture Sinkivka, they will have a straight road all the way down to Petropavlivka, and over within this forest region, they can continue to fan out and attack towards into the outskirts of Kupiansk, where the Ukrainian forces uses this as a major forward operating base within this front line. So Sinkivka have to hold, which is why the Ukrainians are conducting counteroffensive in this area here to prevent the fall of Sinkivka. So the Russians have conducted the Sinkivka offensive since August, and probably before that, and the Russians have not been successful in capturing Sinkivka. So anyway, this is the entire summary for the Ukraine war for the day of 591-592. And so this is not the SIPREP, because SIPREP actually go through every single source. So yeah, this is something more digestible, I believe. Thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe. Do share this with the people you think they will find this interesting. And thank you for watching this forgotten war. Nobody cares about Ukraine anymore, because Palestine and Israel is all the hype. So yeah. And I'll see you in the next update.